The white silk of Amara's wedding gown dragged through the dirt of Namsan Park as she stumbled toward a bench, mascara bleeding down her brown cheeks in rivers of black. Her phone was dead. Her wallet, stolen or lost, she couldn't remember which. And Chikwudi, the man who'd promised her forever just 6 hours ago, was gone. Vanished with her passport, her money, and every shred of trust she'd ever placed in another human being. Seoul towered around her like a glass and steel cage, beautiful and cold, filled with voices speaking a language that sounded like music she'd never learned to dance to. She was alone. Completely, devastatingly alone. And then she felt it, small arms wrapping around her waist, a tiny body pressing against her side with fearless affection. Before we continue, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment your country. I love knowing how far these stories travel. Amara looked down through her tears and saw her. A little girl, no more than 5 years old, with glossy black hair cut into a neat bob and eyes that held too much understanding for someone so young. The child wore an expensive-looking navy dress with white trim, and her patent leather shoes were spotless despite the park's dusty paths. "Why are you crying?" the girl asked in careful, practiced English, her small hands patting Amara's arm with maternal concern that seemed borrowed from someone else's script. Amara couldn't answer. Her throat had closed around all the words she might have said. "I was left at the altar. I'm stranded in a foreign country. I don't know how I'll survive the night." And what came out instead was a broken sob that shook her entire body. The little girl didn't flinch. Instead, she climbed onto the bench beside Amara, wrapped both arms around her neck, and pressed her cheek against Amara's. "It's okay," she whispered. "You can be my mum. I'll take care of you." The words were so absurd, so impossibly sweet, that Amara felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking but opening. She found herself holding this stranger's child, this little girl who smelled like strawberry shampoo and spoke with the solemn certainty of someone making a sacred vow. "Jiwoo." The voice cut through the evening air like a blade, sharp, commanding, edged with barely controlled panic. Amara looked up to see a man striding toward them, and for a moment, she forgot to breathe. He was tall for a Korean man, perhaps 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his charcoal suit with devastating precision. His face was all sharp angles and severe beauty. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips pressed into a tight line. His hair was styled back from his forehead, revealing a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by someone who understood cruelty and elegance in equal measure. But it was his eyes that held her. Dark, penetrating, and currently fixed on his daughter with an intensity that made Amara's stomach tighten. This was a man who was used to being obeyed, who expected the world to bend to his will. And right now, that will was focused entirely on the child in Amara's arms. "I'm sorry," Amara said quickly, releasing Jiwoo and trying to stand. Her legs betrayed her, weak from shock and exhaustion, and she nearly fell. The man's hand shot out, catching her elbow with a grip that was firm but surprisingly gentle. Up close, she could see more. The faint scar that ran through his left eyebrow. The expensive watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her family's house in Lagos. The way his eyes flickered over her wedding dress, her tear-stained face, her bare feet. She'd kicked off her heels somewhere between the hotel and the park, and the way his expression shifted from anger to something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. "Are you hurt?" His English was perfect, barely accented, and his voice was deeper than she'd expected. It resonated in her chest like a bass note. "No," Amara managed. "Your daughter, she was being kind. I'm sorry if I frightened you." "You didn't frighten me." He released her arm but didn't step back. "She frightened me. Jiwoo has a tendency to adopt strays." "Papa." Jiwoo's face crumpled with indignation. "She's not a stray. She's sad and alone and she needs us." The man's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he simply looked at Amara, really looked at her, in a way that made her feel exposed and seen, and somehow vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with her current circumstances. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Amara. Amara Okafor." "Nigerian." She nodded, surprised. "How did you? Your accent. And the pattern on your dress." He gestured to the Ankara fabric trim that bordered the bottom of her wedding gown, traditional Nigerian cloth that the seamstress had added at her mother's insistence. "You're a long way from home, Amara Okafor." Something in the way he said her name made her skin prickle with awareness. He pronounced it correctly, with the emphasis on the second syllable, as if he'd taken the time to get it right. "I am," she admitted, "because what was the point in lying? I was supposed to get married today." But the groom, he didn't show up. And now her voice cracked. I'm stuck here with nothing. Ji-woo gasped, her small hand flying to her mouth. He left you? On your wedding day? That's so mean. She turned to her father with blazing determination. Papa, we have to help her. She can come home with us. Ji-woo, that's not. Please. The little girl's voice rose, taking on a desperate edge that spoke of too many disappointments, too many times being told no. Please, Papa. I never ask for anything. But I'm asking for this. She needs us. The man's face remained impassive, but Amara saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or regret. He looked at his daughter, then back at Amara, and when he spoke again, his tone had shifted into something cooler, more calculated. Can you cook? Amara blinked. What? Can you cook? Clean. Take care of a child. Yes, but do you have somewhere to go tonight? Money. A return ticket to Nigeria? Each question landed like a small blow, forcing her to confront the reality of her situation. No, she whispered. No, I don't. He nodded, as if she'd confirmed something he already knew. Then I have a proposition for you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into her palm. The card was heavy, expensive, with embossed lettering that read Kang Min-Jun, CEO, Kang International Holdings. Come to this address tomorrow at 10 a.m., he said. We'll discuss terms. Terms? Amara felt like she was swimming through fog. Terms for what? His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. For taking care of my daughter. Ji-woo needs someone. You need somewhere to be. Perhaps we can help each other. You're offering me a job? Just like that. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. His gaze held hers, and in that moment, Amara felt like he could see straight through her, past the ruined makeup and the stained dress, down to the core of who she was. I know you're desperate, which means you'll work hard. I know you're educated. Your English is too refined for anything less. I know Ji-woo likes you, which is rare. And I know you're honest, because a liar would have already said yes without questions. Amara's mind spun. This was insane. She'd just met this man, this imposing stranger with his designer suit and his lonely daughter, and his eyes that seemed to carry the weight of unspeakable things. Every instinct she'd developed in her 28 years screamed that this was dangerous, that she should run, that nothing good could come from accepting help from a man like this. But Ji-woo was looking at her with such hope, such naked yearning, that it made Amara's heart ache. And more than that, she had nowhere else to go. No one else to turn to. The Nigerian embassy wouldn't open until Monday, and she didn't know how she'd survive until then. I'll think about it, she heard herself say. Fair enough. Min-Jun pulled out his phone, tapped something, and showed her the screen. I've arranged for a hotel room for you tonight. The Peninsula. Show them this confirmation number. It's already paid for. I can't accept. You can and you will. His voice brooked no argument. Consider it an advance on your salary, should you choose to accept my offer tomorrow. Before Amara could protest further, Ji-woo threw her arms around her waist one more time. Please come, the little girl whispered. Please be my mum, even if it's just pretend. And there it was, the truth beneath the business proposition. This wasn't really about cooking or cleaning. This was about a little girl who'd lost her mother and a father who didn't know how to fill that void. This was about loneliness that money couldn't cure and grief that had nowhere to go. Amara knew about that kind of pain. She'd felt it when her own father died 3 years ago, leaving a hole in her life that she'd tried to fill with Chikwuti's promises and pretty lies. Okay, she said softly, meeting Min-Jun's gaze over his daughter's head. I'll be there tomorrow. Something shifted in his expression, relief, maybe, or satisfaction. He nodded once, then gently detached Ji-woo's arms from around Amara. Come, he said to his daughter. We need to let Ms. Okafor rest. As they walked away, Ji-woo looked back over her shoulder, waving frantically until they disappeared around a corner. And Amara stood there in her ruined wedding dress, holding a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. The Peninsula Hotel was more than Amara had expected. It was a glimpse into a world she'd only seen in movies. The lobby gleamed with marble and gold fixtures, and the staff treated her with courtesy despite her disheveled appearance, as if wealthy women showed up in stained wedding dresses all the time. Her room was on the 18th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering cityscape of Seoul. She stood there for a long time, watching the lights blink on and off like stars, trying to process everything that had happened. She should call her mother. But what would she say? The wedding was cancelled, I'm stranded in Korea, and I've just accepted a job offer from a mysterious businessman whose daughter thinks I should be her mother? Mama would have a heart attack. No, it was better to wait until she had answers. Until she understood what she was walking into. That night, Amara dreamed of small arms wrapped around her and dark eyes that saw too much. The address on Min-Jun's business card led Amara to a building in Gangnam that made the peninsula look modest by comparison. The 40-story tower was all glass and steel, with the Kang International Holdings logo etched into the marble entryway in letters that seemed designed to intimidate. Security was tight. She had to show ID. Thankfully, she'd kept her national identity card in a pocket sewn into her dress, and wait while someone called up to verify her appointment. The guards were polite but thorough, and Amara noticed the way they carried themselves, the subtle bulges under their jackets that suggested weapons. Who exactly was Kang Min-Jun? The elevator took her to the top floor, where the doors opened directly into a penthouse that stole her breath. The space was massive, combining home and office in a way that spoke of someone who didn't believe in separating their lives into neat compartments. One side held a conference table and desk setup, all dark wood and leather. The other side flowed into a living area with low-slung furniture, abstract art on the walls, and windows that made her feel like she was floating above the city. And standing by those windows, backlit by morning sun, was Min-Jun. He'd traded yesterday's suit for something even more devastating, a three-piece in navy blue that fit him like it had been made specifically for his body. Which Amara realized it probably had been. His hair was styled differently today, pushed back to reveal more of his face, and in the daylight, she could see details she'd missed before. The sharp intelligence in his eyes. The way he held himself with absolute certainty. The faint shadows under his eyes that suggested he didn't sleep much. Ms. Okafor. He turned to face her fully, and his gaze swept over her with the same intensity as yesterday. Thank you for coming. Amara had borrowed clothes from the hotel's boutique, simple black slacks and a cream blouse that Min-Jun's advance had covered. She felt more like herself, even if that self was currently terrified and completely out of her depth. Before we begin, she said, forcing her voice to remain steady, I need to know something. Who are you? Really? Min-Jun's eyebrows rose fractionally. I gave you my business card. That tells me what you want people to think you are. I'm asking what you actually are. For a moment, she thought he might be angry. Instead, his lips curved into what might have been approval. Most people don't ask questions. They just see the money and say yes. I'm not most people. No, he agreed softly. You're not. He gestured to the seating area. Sit. We should talk properly. Amara sat, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. Her mother's training and dignity kicking in even now. Min-Jun took the chair across from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive that made her think of cedar and smoke. My family owns several businesses, he began, his tone conversational but his eyes watchful. Legitimate ones, real estate, shipping, entertainment venues. But we also operate in spaces that exist in the gray areas of legality. Import-export arrangements that don't always follow standard customs procedures. Protection services for businesses that prefer not to involve the police. Dispute resolution of a more direct nature. Amara's mouth went dry. You're telling me you're a criminal. I'm telling you I'm a businessman who operates in a world that has its own rules. Rules that sometimes conflict with the ones written in law books. He leaned forward, his gaze pinning her in place. I'm telling you this because if you accept my offer, you'll be entering that world. You need to understand what that means. And what does it mean? It means danger. It means you'll see things that will shock you. It means there will be times when you'll need to be quiet about what you know, discreet about what you observe. It means you'll be under my protection, but that protection comes with expectations. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. Everything rational in her screamed that she should stand up, walk out, find another way to survive. But she thought of Ji-woo's small arms around her, the desperate hope in that little girl's voice. And she thought of something else too. The way Min-Jun had looked at her yesterday, like he saw her as a person rather than a problem to be solved. What kind of expectations? Loyalty, discretion, and most importantly, his voice softened just a fraction, that you genuinely care for my daughter. Ji-woo has been through enough. I won't bring someone into her life who's only there for a paycheck. I would never. Amara stopped, took a breath. Why me? You could hire anyone. Professional nannies. People with experience. I've tried that. Ji-woo hated all of them. She has a gift for seeing through pretense, for knowing when someone is just going through the motions. He paused. Yesterday, when she hugged you, it was the first time in 2 years that I've seen her reach out to someone like that. The first time she smiled like she meant it. The pain in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. This man, this dangerous businessman with his empire of gray legalities, was a father first. A father who was desperately trying to give his daughter something he couldn't provide himself. What happened to her mother? Amara asked quietly. Min-Jun's face became a mask, all emotion locked away behind ice. She died when Ji-woo was 6 months old. An accident. The way he said accident made it clear there was much more to the story, but Amara knew better than to push. Instead, she asked the question that mattered most. What exactly would my role be? You'd live here, in the penthouse. Ji-woo has her own room, and there's a guest suite that would be yours. You'd be responsible for her care, getting her ready for school, helping with homework, meals, bedtime. I have a security team that handles transportation and physical safety, but I need someone who can give her emotional security. Someone who can be present in ways I can't always be. And the salary? He named a figure that made Amara's head spin. It was more than she'd made in 2 years of teaching English in Lagos. More than she'd dreamed of earning even with her master's degree. That's too much, she said automatically. It's exactly right for what I'm asking of you. Min-Jun stood, walked to the window, his profile sharp against the city skyline. You'd be on call essentially 24 hours a day. You'd be giving up your freedom, your privacy, your ability to come and go as you please. You'd be entering a life that most people would find terrifying. That salary reflects the sacrifice you'd be making. Amara stood too, moving to join him by the window. Seoul stretched out below them, vast and unknowable, a city that had already taken so much from her. And if I say no? Then I'll give you money for a plane ticket home, no strings attached. You can go back to Nigeria and forget you ever met us. But she couldn't forget. That was the problem. She couldn't forget Ji-woo's hope, or the way Min-Jun had looked at her like she was someone worth protecting. And more than that, she had nothing to go back to. Chakwudi had made sure of that, taking everything and leaving her with only shame and debt. I have conditions, she heard herself say. Min-Jun turned to look at her, one eyebrow raised. Name them. I need to be able to contact my family, to let them know I'm safe. Of course. I need boundaries. I'll care for Ji-woo. I'll be present and engaged and everything she needs. But I'm not trying to replace her mother. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. Agreed. And this was the hardest part. If I stay, it's because I choose to, not because I'm trapped. If this doesn't work, if I decide this life isn't for me, you'll help me leave. No pressure. No guilt. Min-Jun studied her for a long moment, and Amara forced herself to meet his gaze, to let him see that she meant every word. Finally, he nodded. You have my word. Though I should warn you, once you're in, once you've seen what I do and how I live, leaving becomes complicated. Not because I'll stop you, but because you'll carry knowledge that others might want. A chill ran down Amara's spine. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to be honest with you. Something tells me you appreciate honesty. He was right about that. After Chakwidi's lies, after discovering that everything she'd believed about their relationship was a carefully constructed fiction, honesty felt like oxygen. Okay, she said. I'll do it. I'll take care of Ji-woo. Something flickered across Min-Jun's face. Relief, satisfaction. Something else she couldn't name. He extended his hand, and Amara took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, the strength in his grip. Welcome to the family, Amara Okafor. The words should have sounded professional, businesslike. Instead, they sounded like a promise. Ji-woo's reaction when Amara moved in that evening was everything Min-Jun had hoped for. The little girl screamed with joy, threw herself at Amara with enough force to nearly knock her over, and then proceeded to give her a detailed tour of the entire penthouse, talking so fast that Amara could barely keep up. And this is your room, Ji-woo announced, throwing open the door to a suite that was larger than Amara's entire apartment back in Lagos. The space was decorated in soft neutrals with touches of gold, the bed enormous and covered in pillows that looked like clouds. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the Han River, and there was a sitting area with a small desk, a bathroom that was basically a spa, and a walk-in closet that was currently empty. We can go shopping, Ji-woo declared. Papa will take us. He's really good at shopping. Amara doubted that Min-Jun spent much time in clothing stores, but she smiled anyway. That sounds nice. And you have to meet Ajuma Kim. She's the housekeeper, but she's not here on weekends. She's really nice, but she doesn't speak English, only Korean. But that's okay because I can teach you. I'm really good at teaching." The little girl's enthusiasm was infectious, and Amara found herself laughing for the first time in days. This was going to be okay. Strange and terrifying and completely surreal, but okay. Min-Jun appeared in the doorway, his jacket removed and his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that were more muscular than his suits had suggested. "Ji-woo, let Amara settle in. She's had a long day. But Papa, no arguments. You can show her everything tomorrow." His voice was firm but gentle, and Ji-woo sighed with the dramatic flair of a child who knew when she'd lost. "Okay, but Amara has to read me a bedtime story." She promised. Amara didn't remember promising any such thing, but she nodded anyway. "Of course. Give me an hour to unpack, and then I'll come read to you." Ji-woo skipped away, humming to herself, leaving Amara alone with Min-Jun. The space suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. He stood in her doorway like he belonged there, and Amara was acutely aware of how little she knew about this man whose home she'd just moved into. "She's happy," Min-Jun said quietly. "I haven't seen her this happy in a long time. She's a wonderful child. You've done a good job with her." His laugh was bitter. "I've done the best I could, which isn't saying much. Work keeps me away more than I'd like. And when I am here, I don't always know what to say to her. How to be what she needs." The vulnerability in his admission surprised Amara. This was a different man from the cold businessman she'd met this morning, and she realized that Min-Jun wore his authority like armor, hiding softer things underneath. "Children need presence more than perfection," she said gently. "You're here. You're trying. That matters." He met her eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition. "Thank you," he said, "for giving her a chance. For giving us a chance." Before Amara could respond, he was gone, his footsteps silent on the hardwood floors. And she stood there in her new room, in this glittering penthouse above Seoul, wondering what exactly she'd just gotten herself into. That night, after reading Ji-woo 3 stories instead of 1, after tucking her in and promising to be there when she woke up, Amara returned to her own room and finally allowed herself to fall apart. She called her mother, listening to Mama's worried voice crack with relief when Amara explained she was safe. She didn't mention the wedding disaster or where she was staying. She said she'd decided to stay in Korea for a while, that she'd found work, that everything was fine. Mama didn't believe her, mothers never did, but she didn't push. "Be careful, Amara," she said instead. "The world is dangerous for women alone." "I know, Mama. I will." After they hung up, Amara stood by her window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Chakudi was probably laughing about how easily he'd fooled her. Somewhere out there, her old life was continuing without her. Her friends, her students, the future she'd planned. But here, in this impossible place with this strange family, maybe she could build something new. Maybe she could become someone different. Someone stronger. She didn't let herself think about Min-Jun's dark eyes, or the way his voice had softened when he talked about his daughter. She didn't let herself wonder what it would be like to truly belong here, to be part of something that felt like family. Those were dangerous thoughts. This was a job, nothing more. Even if it was starting to feel like something else entirely. The first week was an adjustment that left Amara exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. Ji-woo was a bundle of energy, brilliant and funny and desperate for attention in ways that broke Amara's heart. The little girl followed her everywhere, chattering constantly, asking questions about Nigeria and Africa and what Amara's life had been like before. "Did you live in a jungle?" Ji-woo asked one afternoon while they were doing homework at the kitchen table. "No, sweetheart. I lived in a city called Lagos. It's very big, with lots of cars and buildings and people. Not so different from Seoul, really. But you have lions and elephants." Amara smiled. "Not in the city. You'd have to go to special places to see those animals. Like a safari. Can we go on a safari? Please. I want to see lions." Before Amara could answer, Min-Jun's voice cut in from the doorway. Perhaps someday. He'd been gone since early morning, and now he stood there in his suit, looking tired but somehow still immaculate. His eyes found Amara's, and something warm flickered in their depths. "How was your day?" "Good," Amara said, hyper-aware of Ji-woo watching them both with keen interest. "We went to the park after school, then worked on math homework. Ji-woo is very good at multiplication." "That's because Amara makes it fun," Ji-woo announced. "She tells stories about numbers. like how 7 and 8 went on an adventure and made 56. Min-Jun's lips twitched with what might have been amusement. I'm glad you're learning. He moved into the kitchen, loosening his tie with one hand, a gesture that Amara found oddly intimate, like watching someone remove armor. Have you eaten dinner? Not yet. I was thinking about making jollof rice if you have the ingredients. Jollof rice. Nigerian food. It's Jiwoo's reward for finishing all her homework. Jiwoo bounced in her seat. Amara says it's the best rice in the world. Better than Korean rice. That's a bold claim, Min-Jun said, and Amara could have sworn she heard playfulness in his tone. I'll have to taste it and judge for myself. Which was how Amara found herself cooking dinner for a Mafia boss and his daughter, trying not to be nervous as Min-Jun leaned against the counter and watched her work. She'd sent Jiwoo to wash her hands, leaving them alone in the kitchen that was bigger than most restaurants. You don't have to stay, Amara said, chopping tomatoes with more force than necessary. I'm sure you have things to do. I do, but none of them are as interesting as watching you cook. Heat that had nothing to do with the stove crept up Amara's neck. I'm not that interesting. I disagree. He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. You've been here a week, and Jiwoo is already a different child. Happier. More open. That's because of you. I'm just doing my job. No. His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that made her pulse quicken. You're doing more than that. You're caring. There's a difference. Amara forced herself to focus on the onions, blinking back tears that were definitely from the vegetables and not from the way Min-Jun was looking at her. She makes it easy. She's a special little girl. She is. And she's lucky to have you. Before Amara could respond, Jiwoo came racing back into the kitchen, and the moment shattered. But for the rest of the evening, as they ate dinner together and Jiwoo told elaborate stories about her day, Amara was acutely aware of Min-Jun's gaze returning to her again and again. It meant nothing, she told herself. He was grateful, that was all. Relieved to have someone who could handle his daughter. But when Jiwoo was finally asleep and Amara was cleaning up the kitchen, Min-Jun appeared again. This time, he'd changed into casual clothes, black pants and a simple t-shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous than his suits did. Let me help, he said, taking the dish towel from her hands. You don't need to. I want to. They worked in silence for a while, the rhythm of it oddly comfortable. Amara washed, Min-Jun dried, and the city sparkled outside the windows like they were the only two people in the world. Can I ask you something? Amara said finally. Always. Why did you really hire me? And don't say it was just because Jiwoo liked me. There has to be more to it than that. Min-Jun set down the plate he'd been drying, his expression thoughtful. You want honesty? Always. His lips curved at her echo of his words. When I saw you in that park, wearing your wedding dress and crying like your world had ended, which I suppose it had, I saw someone who'd been broken but wasn't shattered. Someone who was still intact underneath the damage. And I thought, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I thought that maybe someone like that could understand what it means to survive. To keep going even when everything hurts. Amara's breath caught. You saw all that in 5 minutes? I'm good at reading people. It's how I stay alive in my world. And what else did you read about me? He turned to face her fully, his dark eyes searching hers. I saw someone who was stronger than she knew. Someone who'd been betrayed, but hadn't let it make her bitter. Someone who still had kindness to give, even when the world had been cruel to her. His voice dropped lower. I saw someone I wanted to protect. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs, and she couldn't look away from Min-Jun's gaze, couldn't pretend she didn't feel the pull between them. You barely know me, she whispered. I'm learning. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a stray curl behind her ear. His fingers brushed against her cheek, and Amara felt that touch all the way down to her toes. Is that okay? That I want to learn? She should say no. She should establish boundaries, keep things professional. This was her employer, a man who lived in a world of danger and secrets. Getting involved with him would be the height of stupidity. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was yes. Min-Jun's eyes darkened, and for a moment, Amara thought he might kiss her. Part of her wanted him to. Part of her wanted to know what it would feel like to be touched by someone who looked at her like she was precious. But he stepped back instead, putting distance between them. It's late, he said, his voice rough. You should get some rest. Amara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She fled to her room, her heart racing, her skin still tingling from that brief touch. This was dangerous. This feeling growing between them was dangerous. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to the quiet sounds of the penthouse settling around her, Amara couldn't bring herself to regret it. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, even if it scared her to death. The second week brought changes that Amara hadn't expected. Min-Jun started coming home earlier, joining them for dinner most nights. He taught Amara basic Korean phrases, his patience surprising her as he repeated words until she could pronounce them correctly. He insisted on driving Ji-woo to school himself on the mornings when he didn't have early meetings, and more than once, Amara caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. And then there were the gifts. First, it was a new phone, top of the line, already programmed with important numbers and apps she might need. For emergencies, Min-Jun said, but Amara suspected it was because he'd noticed her old phone was barely functional. Then it was clothes. An entire wardrobe appeared in her closet while she was out with Ji-woo. Beautiful things in her size, from casual wear to elegant dresses, all perfectly chosen for her taste and coloring. "You can't keep buying me things," Amara protested when she found him in his office that evening. The room was all dark wood and leather, with bookshelves lining one wall and a massive desk that looked like it had seen serious use. Min-Jun sat behind it, papers spread out before him, looking every inch the powerful executive. He glanced up, his expression neutral. "Why not?" "Because it's too much. The salary is already generous. I don't need. But I want to." He set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "Is it so hard to believe that I might enjoy giving you things?" "Yes," Amara said honestly. "We barely know each other." Min-Jun stood, moving around the desk to lean against it, his arms crossed over his chest. "Then let me know you better. Tell me something about yourself that I don't already know." Amara hesitated, then decided to be brave. "I was supposed to be a teacher. That's what I studied for, what I did back in Lagos. I taught English literature to high school students, and I loved it. I loved watching their faces light up when they understood a poem or connected with a character in a novel." "Why did you stop?" "Because Chukwudi convinced me to come to Korea. He said we'd build a life here together, that he had opportunities we'd never find in Nigeria. And I believed him because," her voice caught, "because I wanted to believe that someone loved me enough to build a future with me." Min-Jun's jaw tightened. He was a fool. Maybe I was the fool for trusting him. "No." Min-Jun pushed off the desk, closing the distance between them. "He was the fool for not seeing what he had, for taking your trust and breaking it, for leaving you when he should have been on his knees thanking whatever gods would listen that you chose him." The intensity in his voice made Amara's pulse race. "Min-Jun, I mean it." His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone in a touch that was achingly tender. "You deserve better than what he gave you. You deserve someone who sees you, who values you, who would never leave you standing alone." Amara's eyes burned with unshed tears. "You can't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I work for you. Because this is complicated enough without." She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't put words to the growing attraction between them that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. "Without what?" Min-Jun's voice was barely above a whisper. "Without admitting that there's something here? Something neither of us expected." "Yes," Amara breathed. "Exactly that." For a long moment, they stood there, barely a breath apart, and Amara could see the war playing out in Min-Jun's eyes. Desire versus restraint, want versus wisdom. Finally, he stepped back, his hand falling away from her face. "You're right," he said, his voice rough. "This is your choice to make. I won't push." "But Amara," his gaze held hers, "if you ever decide you want more than what we have now, all you have to do is tell me. I'll be waiting." Amara fled before she could do something stupid like close the distance between them and find out what his lips tasted like. But that night, alone in her room, she let herself imagine it. Imagine what it would be like to be wanted by a man like Kang Min-Jun. To be chosen. To be cherished. It was a dangerous fantasy. One that could destroy the fragile peace she'd built here. But she couldn't seem to stop herself from wanting it anyway. The first crack in their peaceful bubble came on a Tuesday afternoon when Amara took Ji-woo to the park near the penthouse. It was a routine they'd established. Fresh air after school, time to run and play before homework and dinner. Ji-woo was on the swings, pumping her legs with determined concentration, when Amara noticed the man watching them. He stood near the park entrance, partially hidden by a tree, and there was something about his stillness that set off alarm bells in Amara's head. She'd learned to trust her instincts in Seoul. Min-Jun's world required constant vigilance. "Ji-woo," she called, keeping her voice light. "Time to go home, sweetheart." "But we just got here." "I know, but your papa will be home early today. Don't you want to see him?" That did it. Ji-woo jumped off the swing mid-arc, landing with practiced ease, and skipped over to take Amara's hand. As they walked toward the park exit, Amara pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to Min-Jun. "Man watching us at the park. Heading home now." His response was immediate. "Security is on their way. Stay calm. Act normal." By the time they reached the penthouse building, 2 of Min-Jun's security team were waiting in the lobby, stern-faced men in dark suits who nodded to Amara and fell into step behind them. She didn't look back to see if the man from the park had followed. Min-Jun was home within 15 minutes, his face a mask of controlled fury. He sent Ji-woo to her room with instructions to play quietly, then turned to Amara. "Are you all right?" "Yes. A little shaken, but we're fine." "Did he approach you? Speak to you?" "No. He just watched." "But Min-Jun, it was." She struggled to put it into words. It felt wrong. Predatory. Min-Jun's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I'll handle it." "Who is he?" "I don't know yet. But I will." He moved closer, his hands coming up to grip her shoulders gently. "I should have warned you better. Prepared you for this." "For what?" "For the fact that being in my life makes you a target. My enemies know the best way to hurt me is through the people I care about." His gaze held hers, intense and haunted. "And they've noticed I care about you." Amara's breath caught. "Min-Jun, I won't apologize for it. But I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. You and Ji-woo both." That night, security was doubled. Amara noticed more men in the building, cameras in places there hadn't been cameras before. And Min-Jun didn't leave for work the next morning, instead conducting business from his home office with a steady stream of serious-looking men coming and going. Ji-woo sensed the tension, becoming quieter than usual, clinging to Amara with unusual neediness. "Is Papa mad at us?" she whispered during lunch. "No, sweetheart. He's just being careful, making sure we're safe. Because bad people want to hurt us?" The question was too knowing, too aware. This little girl had grown up in Min-Jun's world, and she understood things no 5-year-old should have to understand. "Your papa won't let anyone hurt us," Amara said firmly. "He's very strong, and he loves you very much." "He loves you too," Ji-woo said with the blunt honesty of children. "I can tell. He looks at you the way princes look at princesses in stories." Amara's heart squeezed. "I think you've been reading too many fairy tales." "Maybe. But I'm still right." Ji-woo leaned against her. "I'm glad you're here, Amara. Even when scary things happen, I'm glad." Later that evening, after Ji-woo was asleep, Amara found Min-Jun standing by the windows in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked tired in a way she hadn't seen before. Not physically exhausted, but emotionally drained. "Did you find him?" she asked quietly. "Yes. And he won't be a problem anymore." The finality in his tone made it clear she shouldn't ask for details. "But Amara, this won't be the last time. As long as you're here, you'll be in danger. My world doesn't allow for safety." She moved to stand beside him, looking out at the city they shared. "I know. You should go back to Nigeria. I can make arrangements, give you enough money to start over properly. You'd be safe there. Is that what you want?" She turned to look at him, at the hard lines of his profile and the shadows in his eyes. "For me to leave?" "No." The word was torn from him. "God help me, no. But what I want doesn't matter. Your safety matters. Then let me make my own choice." Amara reached out, her hand finding his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "I'm staying. Ji-woo needs me. And," she took a breath, gathering her courage, "I think maybe you need me too." Min-Jun set down his glass and turned to face her fully, his hands coming up to frame her face with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the danger he represented. "I don't just need you," he said roughly. "I want you. In ways I shouldn't. In ways that terrify me because they make me vulnerable. Maybe vulnerability isn't always a weakness. In my world, it is." But even as he said it, he was leaning closer, his forehead coming to rest against hers. "You're going to be the death of me, Amara Okafor. Or maybe I'll be the life of you," she whispered. He kissed her then, slow and careful and devastating. His lips were softer than she'd imagined, and he tasted like whiskey and want and something darker that she couldn't name. One hand slid into her hair while the other pressed against the small of her back, pulling her closer, and Amara felt herself melting into him, into this moment that she'd been pretending she didn't want. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-Jun pressed his forehead against hers again. "This changes everything," he said. "I know. We can't go back from this. I don't want to go back." He pulled her into his arms then, holding her like she was something precious and breakable. And Amara let herself be held, let herself feel safe despite the danger swirling around them, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this impossible thing between them could work. She didn't let herself think about all the ways it could go wrong. Not yet. The next few weeks brought a shift in their relationship that everyone noticed, but no one mentioned directly. Min-Jun touched her more, casual brushes of his hand against hers, fingers at the small of her back when they walked together, lingering looks across the dinner table. He started joining them for bedtime stories, sitting on the edge of Ji-woo's bed with Amara beside him, their shoulders touching as they took turns reading. Ji-woo was delighted, her happiness spilling over into every moment. "We're like a real family now," she announced one morning at breakfast, and neither Min-Jun nor Amara contradicted her. But the danger hadn't disappeared. If anything, it had intensified. Amara learned to recognize Min-Jun's security team by name, learned which cars were safe and which buildings to avoid. She learned that some nights, Min-Jun came home with blood on his clothes, never his own, and that asking questions would only earn her silence. She learned that loving a man like Kang Min-Jun meant accepting all of him, even the parts that lived in darkness. The crisis came on a Thursday night when Min-Jun burst into the penthouse at midnight, his face white with fury and fear. Amara was still awake, reading in her room, and she raced out at the sound of his voice. "Pack a bag," he ordered, his tone brooking no argument. "You and Ji-woo. Now. What's happening? The Beck family knows about you. About what you mean to me. They're planning to use you to force my hand in a territory dispute." His hands were shaking as he gripped her shoulders. "I need to get you somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't find you." Amara's heart hammered. "For how long?" "I don't know. Days. Maybe weeks." His voice cracked. "Amara, if they get to you, if they hurt you because of me." "They won't." She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "We'll do what you say. We'll go wherever you need us to go. But Min-Jun, you have to promise me you'll be careful too. That you won't do something reckless because you're worried about us. I can't lose you." The confession was raw, stripped of all his usual control. "Either of you. You're everything. You've become everything." Amara kissed him then, hard and quick and full of all the fear and love and desperation churning inside her. "Then fight smart, not just hard. Come back to us. Always." Within an hour, they were in an armored car heading out of Seoul, Ji-woo sleeping against Amara's shoulder, unaware of the danger. Min-Jun sat across from them, his phone constantly buzzing with updates, his face set in lines of grim determination. The safe house was on the coast, 3 hours from Seoul, a sprawling property hidden behind gates and guards, with views of the ocean and enough security to withstand a small army. Min-Jun carried Ji-woo inside personally, refusing to let anyone else touch her, and stayed until she was settled in one of the bedrooms. "I have to go back," he told Amara as dawn broke over the water. They stood on the terrace, the wind whipping her hair around her face. "My men are waiting, but I'll return as soon as I can. Be safe." "I will, because I have something worth coming back to." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "I've loved you since that day in the park when you looked at me like I might be someone worth trusting. And I know this is too fast, too soon, too complicated." "I love you too," Amara interrupted, the words spilling out before she could second-guess them. "I don't know how it happened, but I do. I love you, Min-Jun." He kissed her like he was drowning and she was air, like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to something good and pure in his violent world. And when he finally pulled away, his eyes were bright with emotion he didn't try to hide. "When this is over," he said, "I'm going to do this properly. Court you. Ask you to stay not as Ji-woo's guardian, but as my partner. My wife, if you'll have me." Amara's heart soared and broke simultaneously. "Ask me when you come back." "I will. That's a promise." He left as the sun climbed higher, his car disappearing down the long driveway, and Amara stood there until she couldn't see it anymore, her hand pressed against her heart, praying to every god she could think of to keep him safe. The next 3 days were the longest of Amara's life. She tried to keep things normal for Ji-woo, playing games on the beach, reading stories, baking cookies in the safe house's enormous kitchen. But at night, when Jiwoo was asleep, Amara stood on the terrace and watched for headlights, checking her phone obsessively for updates that rarely came. Min-Jun's right-hand man, Taeyong, was their only source of information. He called each morning with terse updates. Negotiations were ongoing, the situation was volatile, Min-Jun was alive and unharmed. On the fourth day, Jiwoo started asking questions Amara couldn't answer. Why did we leave home? When is Papa coming? Is he in danger? Your father is very strong and very smart, Amara said, pulling the little girl into her lap. He's handling some difficult business, but he'll come for us as soon as he can. But what if he doesn't? Jiwoo's voice was small, frightened. What if the bad people hurt him like they hurt my mama? Amara's blood ran cold. Sweetheart, what do you mean? I heard Ajuma Kim talking to one of the security men once. She said my mama died because of bad people who wanted to hurt Papa. Is that true? So many things suddenly made sense. Min-Jun's paranoia about safety, his desperate need to protect those he loved, the shadows that haunted his eyes when he looked at his daughter. His wife hadn't died in an accident. She'd been murdered. And now history might be repeating itself. Your Papa is not going to let anything happen to him, Amara said firmly, holding Jiwoo tight. And we're going to stay right here, safe and sound, until he comes for us. Okay. Jiwoo nodded against her shoulder, but Amara could feel the little girl trembling. That night, Amara barely slept. She kept thinking about Min-Jun, about all the things they'd never said, all the time they might never have. She thought about going back to Nigeria, about the life she'd left behind. It felt like a dream now, something that had happened to someone else. This was her life now. This family, broken and dangerous and somehow perfect. She couldn't imagine losing it. She couldn't imagine losing him. The knock on her bedroom door came at 2 a.m. Amara bolted upright, her heart in her throat, and threw open the door to find Taeyong standing there, his face grim. Get dressed, he said. We need to move. Now. What happened? The Beck family knows you're here. They're sending men. We have maybe 30 minutes. Amara was moving before he finished speaking, throwing on clothes, racing to Jiwoo's room. The little girl woke disoriented and frightened, and Amara scooped her up, wrapping her in a blanket. It's okay, baby. We're going on an adventure. Where's Papa? He's coming. He's on his way. But we need to be brave and quiet, okay? The safe house that had felt like a fortress now felt like a trap. Taeyong hustled them down the back stairs and into a waiting car, 3 other security men forming a protective barrier around them. As they pulled away, Amara looked back to see headlights cresting the hill behind them. Too close. They were too close. Faster, Taeyong barked to the driver. The next minutes were a blur of speed and fear. Jiwoo clung to Amara, whimpering, and Amara held her tight, murmuring reassurances she didn't feel. The car took turns at dangerous speeds, the guards constantly checking their phones and radios. And then suddenly, there were other cars, coming from the opposite direction, forming a blockade in the road ahead. Amara's heart stopped. They were trapped. But as Taeyong reached for his weapon, Amara saw the lead car's door open. And Min-Jun stepped out. He was there. He'd come for them. Stay here, Taeyong ordered, but Amara was already moving, throwing open the car door and running toward Min-Jun. He caught her in his arms, lifting her off her feet, his face buried in her hair. You're okay, he breathed. Thank God. You're okay. So are you. Amara pulled back just enough to see his face, bruised on one side, with a cut above his eyebrow, but alive and whole in there. I know. I'm sorry. But it's over. The Becks agreed to peace terms. You're safe now. Jiwoo's cry of Papa interrupted them, and Min-Jun released Amara to scoop up his daughter, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. My brave girl, he whispered. My strong, brave girl. I wasn't scared, Jiwoo lied, her face pressed against his neck. Amara said you'd come. And I always will. He looked at Amara over Jiwoo's head, his eyes saying everything words couldn't. I'll always come for both of you. The journey back to Seoul took 3 hours, Jiwoo falling asleep between them in the back seat, Min-Jun's hand clasped tightly in Amara's. Neither of them spoke much. There would be time for words later. For now, it was enough to be together, to be safe, to have survived. As dawn broke over the city, Min-Jun pulled Amara closer. I meant what I said, he murmured. About wanting to do this properly. About asking you to stay. I'm not going anywhere, Amara promised. This is my home now. You and Jiwoo, you're my family. Then marry me. The words were simple, stark, but Amara could hear the weight behind them. Not because it's practical or because Jiwoo needs you. Marry me because I love you. Because I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice when you decided to stay. Amara felt tears slip down her cheeks, happy tears this time. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Min-Jun kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, with the city they'd nearly died in spreading out around them and his daughter sleeping peacefully beside them. It wasn't the ending Amara had imagined for herself. But it was better. It was real. It was hers. 3 months later, Amara stood in front of a mirror, adjusting the traditional Nigerian wedding attire her mother had sent from Lagos. The Oso oak fabric was stunning, gold and cream with intricate patterns that caught the light. For the ceremony, she would also wear a Korean hanbok that Min-Jun's family had commissioned, a perfect blend of both their worlds. You look beautiful, Jiwoo breathed from the doorway. The little girl wore her own miniature hanbok, her hair adorned with delicate pins. Papa is going to cry when he sees you. Your papa doesn't cry, Amara said with a laugh. He does sometimes. I've seen him. When he thinks nobody's watching. Jiwoo came closer, her expression suddenly serious. Amara? After today, you'll be my real mama, right? Not just pretend. Amara knelt down, taking the little girl's hands in hers. I was never pretending, sweetheart. From that first day in the park when you asked me to be your mom, I've been yours. Today just makes it official. Good. Jiwoo threw her arms around Amara's neck. Because I love you. So much. I love you too, my brave girl. The wedding was intimate, just family and Min-Jun's most trusted associates. They held it at the penthouse, the space transformed with flowers and lights, and the kind of beauty that took Amara's breath away. And when she walked toward Min-Jun, who stood by the windows with Seoul glittering behind him, she saw that Jiwoo had been right. There were tears in his eyes. You came back to me, he said when she reached him, his voice rough with emotion. That day in the park, you were broken and lost, and somehow you found your way to us. To me. We found each other, Amara corrected softly. You and Jiwoo, you saved me too. The ceremony blended traditions from both their cultures. Prayers in Korean and Igbo, blessings from elders on both sides, the exchange of rings that represented promises they both intended to keep. And when the officiant finally declared them married, when Min-Jun kissed her with all the love and passion and desperate relief of a man who'd nearly lost everything, Amara felt herself finally truly home. The reception was joyful, filled with laughter and music and dancing. Amara's mother had flown in from Nigeria, and she cried happy tears as she watched her daughter spin in her new husband's arms. Min-Jun's associates, hardened men who'd seen and done terrible things, smiled as they watched their boss, softened by love, make his new wife laugh. And Jiwoo? She danced between them, her laughter ringing out like bells, finally complete. Late that night, after the guests had left and Jiwoo was asleep in her room, Min-Jun found Amara on the terrace where they'd shared so many conversations. The city sparkled below them, alive with possibility. Happy? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Deliriously. Amara leaned back against him, feeling the solid strength of his body, the steady beat of his heart. Though I never imagined I'd be married to a Mafia boss. Reformed Mafia boss, Min-Jun corrected with a hint of amusement. I'm going legitimate, remember? No more gray areas. Just straight business from now on. It was true. The peace treaty with the Beck family had included agreements to phase out illegal operations, and Min-Jun had been quietly restructuring his empire to focus on legitimate enterprises. It would take time, but he was committed to building a life where Jiwoo, and any future children, could grow up without fear. I'm proud of you, Amara said softly, for choosing this path. You gave me a reason to choose it, a reason to be better. He turned her in his arms, his hands framing her face with infinite tenderness. You and Jiwoo, you're everything good in my life. Everything worth fighting for. Then we'll fight together, Amara promised. Whatever comes, we face it as a family. As a family, Min-Jun echoed, and kissed her under the stars, in the city that had broken her and remade her, in the arms of the man she'd never expected to love. Somewhere in the penthouse, Jiwoo slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that she finally had everything she'd ever wanted. A family, a mother, a home filled with love. And Amara, who'd come to Seoul wearing a wedding dress meant for someone else, who'd been abandoned and lost and broken, had found something she'd never known she needed. Not just love, not just safety, but belonging. She'd found her place in the world, and she was never letting it go. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who is your favorite character? Do you think Amara made the right choice? And what would you want to see happen next in their lives? Drop your comments below, and if this story touched your heart, please consider supporting the channel with a super thanks. Don't forget to subscribe and share this story with someone who loves mafia romance with a twist. Until next time, keep believing in unexpected love.